the committee of the whole is back in order from recess. I believe the question that was asked by the speaker has been answered by OAB, has been answered. So we'll now close DOC, Department of Correction. Yes, Senator Barris, you have a question you want for DOC?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to proffer an amendment. I think it's
I
being
mean,
uploaded.
you have an amendment?
Yeah,
For DOC?
and there's another one.
Oh, what you asked for is for GPD?
There's,
And that's bookmark?
No, there's also DOC too.
There is a DOC?
There should be two.
Okay. No, we're just going to keep moving because we bookmark it, and whenever we bookmark, we'll just keep going. And then we will capture all the bookmarks. And we'll just capture everybody because everybody should get all their amendments ready. But you have an amendment for DOC, Senator Burris? Okay, it's uploading at this time. Okay. My colleagues, once I get the green light that the amendment is uploaded, then I'll ask you to refresh your drive so you can see it. No, we'll be page 68 for DOC. So I'm going to go ahead and just declare us on recess. So are you ready for it? We haven't seen it yet, so we're in recess. The committee of the whole is back in order. My colleagues, please refresh your drive. You'll find that the amendment is SB 55, SFP L14, page 69. Am I correct, Senator Paris?
Yes, that's correct, Mr.
All right,
Chair.
please go ahead.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this amendment does is it ensures that any kind of lapsed funds are continually used by the Department of Corrections, in light of the conversation that we had earlier, 5.5 million is a large amount of money due to these hardworking employees, and I just want to make sure that the language is there to ensure that they are funded. So it states, continuing appropriation authorization notwithstanding any other provision of law, any and all appropriated funds from the General Fund, the Department of Corrections Inmate Revolving Fund, and the Safe Streets Fund, the Department of Corrections for fiscal year 2021 shall not lapse and shall continue to be available until fully expended.
Thank you, Senator Paris, for that amendment. Does any of my colleagues would like to speak to that amendment? There being none, Senator Paris, is there any objection to it? Or would you like to close this? None? Are there any objection to this amendment? This takes care of the continuing appropriation for DOC that might be a concern. I know to the speaker that I was worried that in case that would be on page 69, but it's on the drive. Are there any objection to the amendment? There being none, motion passes. Are there any other amendments? Nothing else. That would complete the Department of Correction. We will now close the Department of Correction. All right? Department of Correction is closed. We now have Department of Agriculture. Senator Amanda, you wanted to bookmark Department of Agriculture?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I ask that we bookmark
All right,
chapter,
thank you.
the section. Thank you.
All right, now, are there any objections to the bookmark of Department of Agriculture? There being none, Department of Agriculture is bookmarked. We are now at the Guam Public Library System. Are there any amendments to? None, right? No amendments. Are there any? None. There being none, Guam Public Library System is now closed. We are now Department of Youth Affairs. We are at page 73.
Mr. Chair, I ask that I can bookmark DYA as well.
All right, there being no objection to bookmark, DYA is bookmarked. We are now at Guam Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. Oversight Chair, do you have anything or you would like to bookmark that? Okay, we will bookmark. Are there any objection? There being not, no?
Wait, are we talking about bookmarking Guam EPA or DYA?
EPA, we're at EPA now.
Oh, no, I have an amendment.
Okay, okay, then that'll be SB 55 SFP L3, page 76, ma'am?
That's correct.
All right, then please proceed with your amendment.
Okay, this amendment would add a subsection, a new subsection R, continuing appropriation authorization, very similar to the previous one that I proffered, but for Guam EPA, notwithstanding any other provision of law, any and all appropriated funds from the Air Pollution Control Fund, Guam Environmental Trust Fund, Pesticide Management Fund, Water Protection Fund, Water Research and Development Fund, Solid Waste Operations Fund, Recycling Revolving Fund, and the General Fund to the Guam Environmental Protection Agency for fiscal year 2021 shall not lapse and shall continue to be available until fully expended. I think it's important that whatever funds that they have appropriated to them can be utilized for their regulatory functions. They definitely need the funds to also recruit additional staff to help build their capacity. So anything that we can do to support them.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Are there anyone who would like to speak to that? There being none, any objection? I see none. Motion passes. Now and that's all you have on EPA. We're now Department of Labor.
Mr. Chair, is EPA bookmarked?
Who? EPA, no.
Okay,
EPA is
thank
not
you.
bookmarked,
Thank
no,
you.
because we were able to complete it. All right, we're now Department of Labor. I don't see an amendment for Department of Labor. That being said, we will now close Department of Labor. Okay, we're now on page 79, which is the Department of Parks and Recs. Department of Parks and Recs, do we have any, no, I don't see an amendment. I don't see a motion to bookmark. That being said, Department of Park, yes, ma'am.
I just asked to bookmark that.
Bookmark Department of Parks and Rec, all right. No objection to Department of Parks and Rec being bookmarked. We will move from there. We are now on page 81, Department of Land Management. Yeah, one pager. Yes, ma'am, Madam Speaker, your agency. Did you wanted to bookmark that one? Or,
No, just wanted to ask,
all right.
this is a decrease from last year, but this is supposed to be funded out of the Land Survey Revolving Fund, which is fees that they get from people filing things up there at Land Management. And so I just want to know, is this because it's tracking less and you don't expect them to make any more than this, or you don't expect them to make as much as they made in 2021 when businesses were closed?
Yes, Senator, what's reflected in the bill is basically what they're tracking. And, that's the amount we feel that's, something that we feel is achievable based on their current collections over the last couple of years. And if I may say, at this point, I think an amendment is needed because the amount was changed. We added $289,470. If I'm not mistaken, it was an amendment made.
My amendment
Yes.
earlier to the revenue,
Yes,
right? Okay.
yes.
Yes.
Sorry, then, hold on. What chapter are we? Page 81. I guess I'll bookmark that, Mr. Chair. It's not prepared.
Okay, we'll bookmark, and then we can address that there is an increase. It's not just 3,129,78. It's, what's the total?
3,118,000. $418,548
Thank you.
would be the adjusted amount.
I would ask that the update and technical correction because of the amendments.
I just moved that amendment right now, Mr. Chair, then,
Yes.
that number.
All right. Okay, so we'll bookmark it and then.
No, I'll
we'll-
just make that amendment right now.
You make the
without
amendment
a- Without it in writing, if I could.
Yes.
Just that amount be changed to reflect the revenues.
Yes. All right. There any objection to that? There being none, do we have anything else for Department of Land Management? There being none, Department of Land Management is closed. We are now at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. Yes, Senator Teller, you have something for the Office of Chief Medical Examiner?
Just a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Last year, we gave the same amount that we're giving this year. We know that the chief medical examiners, actually, the Attorney General's office has been trying to find someone to fill that position for the longest time, for the last couple of years or so. And the dire need of a medical examiner, for Guam is desperately needed at this point. And if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the issues that were arising from that is funding that, we're losing the opportunity to have a medical examiner here on Guam because they're getting more money in the state. They're being offered over $500,000. So my question is to OFB, if in pertaining to this chief medical examiner, which is under the Attorney General's office, have they asked for additional funding higher than the amount that we've offered for them last year, which is, I see you're putting the same amount for this year.
This amount reflected, Senator, is what's reflected in the executive budget.
That's what they requested. That's what they asked for, nothing more.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So there being no amendment for the Office of Chief Medical Examiner, page 82 is now closed. We are now on page 83, which I think that's something you want to bookmark until we settle the other parts, right? Then we're going to bookmark Customs and Quarantine, page 83. There's no objection to bookmark. It's bookmarked. We are now Department of Tomorrow Affairs, page 84. I see no amendments for page 84, Department of Tomorrow Affairs. It's now closed. Department of Military Affairs. Yes, ma'am. A big one? Which one? Customs? We bookmarked Customs. Yes, we did. Okay? So we can come back to it. Now we're at Department of Tomorrow Affairs. There is no amendment for Department of Tomorrow Affairs. We will now close Department of Tomorrow Affairs. We are now at Department of Military Affairs. There is no amendment for Department of Military Affairs. We will now close on Department of Military Affairs. Yes, ma'am. The Department of Military Affairs is basically the Guam National Guard, the civilian side. This is what they asked for, right? Steve? Yeah.
Just checking with OB. The general fund side has increased, but the federal matching has gone down.
One of the things in our conversation with the reason I had this in general was that the problem in the past was that there was federal dollars available for them, but we just didn't have the local match. So she came and asked whether or not we can increase the general fund, actually over the governor's request, so they can secure the additional federal funds that are available to them. And she said that if we were to go ahead and allow her to obtain that, it would provide more funding for the operation of the agency and not so much rely on the general fund as it is now.
All right, but it doesn't reflect that in the federal matching, right?
That's
So they
correct.
haven't got it yet, they're hoping to.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
that's
Thank you,
correct.
Mr. Chair.
All right, that being said, Department of Military Affairs is now closed. Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities, we have no amendments for that on page 86. That section, Guam Council on Arts and Humanities, agency is now closed. Oh, ma'am, speaker. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, this agency increased by, is it $200,000? Just want to find out
Guam Council.
why that is, where that came from. It says general fund. Most of our agencies have not increased. Yeah, this one did.
The amount that you're citing, Senator, for the 200,000 is this the FESPAC appropriation?
And that was appropriated last year to them? So are you saying that that is spent?
Oh, Senator, remember last year when we did the FAST, we actually allowed them to roll over the 200,000? Yeah. Yeah, so what we did basically is kind of like reduce the 200,000 for 22. Oh, I'm sorry, not reduce it, we just carried it over.
Okay. So,
That's all
but
it
last
is.
year, it says the general fund appropriation was 188. Now it's 388.
They had a miscellaneous provision that allowed the agency to use the 200,000 FESPAC funds.
Okay, so now you're putting it in here. So you're saying that they're able to spend that money now?
Yes, ma'am.
They're going to spend that money for their operations?
We allowed them 2 years to do that last year, and this year we hope they utilize this for operation. That's correct.
All right, that money didn't go into a special fund to be reserved for SPECSPAC?
The fund was in a special account, Senator, but I believe when we allowed them to utilize the money, it was moved to a different account. But it is available for them to be used for operation.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question on this one.
Yes, Senator Reyes.
So when the original appropriation was made, it was general fund revenue?
I'm sorry, one more time, Senator?
So when the 200,000 that ended up not being expended for FESPAC, that was a general fund appropriation?
I believe so.
Okay. Can I bookmark this section? Can I bookmark this?
You want to bookmark this? Okay, we'll bookmark. No objection. We're going to bookmark Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities. All right, my colleagues? Now we'll move to Guam Fire Department. There are no, do we have amendments for Guam Fire? None, right? Page 87? We have no amendments. Senator Moylan. Bookmark Guam Fire Department. Guam Fire Department, no objection. Objection is now bookmarked. We're now on Guam Education Telecommunication Corporation. There are no amendments to that. Yes, Senator, Madam Speaker? You want to bookmark that for now until you confirm? We're good? Okay, there being no amendments, Senator Tello. We're at now the Guam Education Telecommunication Corporation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe there's been an increase here. Last year, it was appropriated for 570, coming from the Educational Facilities Fund. Okay, and looking like there's a little bit more this time around, Mr. Chair. And it is a special fund that it's being appropriated from. So, what are we tracking right now for the
Steve?
Guam Educational Facilities Fund?
Give me 1 second, Senator.
Sure, no problem.
What is the Guam Education Telecommunication funding? What is it tracking? Guam Education Facilities Fund? No. Guam Education, yeah, Facility Fund. Now, what one is it? Hey, Senator, what the fund is tracking right now is about $34 million.
I'm sorry?
The fund right now is tracking about $34 million.
Okay, so basically, and it's also, if I'm not mistaken, that's about $3.6 million short from projected revenues. Actually, the projected revenues was 38 million.
That's correct.
Right, okay, but we're only coming in at 34 million right now. And we just have August and September to go. Let me look at your projected revenues here. What are you projecting, Steve, for FY22? Okay, I see it here. You're projecting for the Educational Facilities Fund 34.6, which is technically what we have right now. So you did lessen the amount.
That's correct.
Okay, to reflect that.
All right, Senator Tello, that answer your questions?
Yeah, yes, it did. But it does show that we are increasing the amount that we provided for them in FY21. It's gone up a bit, about 765, about 50. Is it about $50,000 more compared to last year? Last year was 570,582.
It was a nominal amount, Senator, and also we try to come up to the level of what the governor requested.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. The question's been answered. There's no amendment for page 88. Guam Education Telecommunication Corporation is now closed. We are now on page 89, Tomorrowland Trust Commission. Madam Speaker, do you have anything? Because I know that you oversee that one.
I'd like to bookmark this, please.
Bookmark this one, yes. And hopefully they got more money from GTA. We're going to bookmark. There are no objections to bookmark Tomorrowland Trust. We'll move now to Guam Regional Transit Authority.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Senator
If I may.
Pito.
I would like to proffer an amendment
You have an amendment
on
for
the on
page
substitute bill 5536 COR, line 15, page 90, to add the bill to read continuing appropriation and prior year obligation authorization.
Okay, Senator, if we check if it's been uploaded so that you can read that and we can address that so everybody, I know you're asking for continued appropriation. Please stand by. My colleagues, we're gonna take a quick recess so we can make the technical corrections on your amendments under P2, and then you'll be able to address that, all right? So a few minutes recess. They're going to fix it. All right, thank you. Recess.
Mr. Chair,
colleagues, if you can refresh your drive, and you'll find that SB 55 JBT L15, page 90, which is Senator Peter Terlai's amendment. Senator Peter, if you can go ahead and just read your amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To add the bill to read continuing appropriation and prior year obligation authorization, notwithstanding any provision of law, rule, and regulation, the allotted but unexpended balance of funds appropriated to the Guam Regional Transit Authority in FY 2021 shall not lapse and shall continue to be available for prior and current year obligation until fully expended.
Thank you, Senator Terlai. Is anyone like to speak to that? A continuing appropriation? There being none, are there any, Madam Speaker?
I support that amendment. I just want to ask why they were given less this year than last year.
Steve, if you can answer that question, please.
Solid waste one, right? Huh? All transit. What is that one for? Okay, what we did, Senator, was went ahead and gave what the governors requested, but when we transferred also the funding source from the Guam Highway Fund and tracking, because of the tracking in the Guam Highway Fund, we have to subsidize it with the general fund.
All right, Madam Speaker?
Did they say this is adequate for them? They're going to be able to continue their services?
I believe in talking to the manager of the Guam Regional Mass Transit, he said that, this amount would be adequate, but he is also asking for additional amounts for other programs and other projects. And I told him, I said, should money become available, we'll try to address it. But as of this level, he was kind of content with it. He said, okay.
I support the amendment.
All right, thank you. Are there any other colleagues like to speak to the amendment? There being none, Senator Peter, do you want to close on the amendment, or we'll just go to? All right, are there any objection to the amendment? There being none, motion passes. That would complete page 90, Guam Regional Transit Authority. So that's closed. We are now at Guam Election Commission. Senator Amanda, you wanted to bookmark this?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Request to bookmark this section.
All right, thank you. No objection to bookmarking. We're now at Guam Solid Waste Authority. Does anyone, we have no amendments to Guam Solid Waste Authority. That being stated, Madam Speaker, yes.
Yes, so I just want to, so this is less again than last year, and that means that the Solid Waste Operations Fund is tracking less, that people are not paying their bills, or what's going on there?
My understanding, Senator, yes, that is part of the problem, especially when it comes to the commercial side of collections. With the closure of the hotels, a lot of businesses, according to solid waste, they saw a decrease in collections on the commercial side of the account they saw a shortage, a reduction in the commercial side of collections. On the residential side, it was okay. They was having problems collecting, but I think, hopefully as we go along, everybody will come up to par. But the biggest problem they did cite was the commercial side.
Thank you.
All right, there being no amendments to page 92, Guam Solid Waste Authority is now closed. We are now at the Gardner Restoration and Redevelopment Authority. I see no amendments to that section. We will now close that section. The Gardner Restoration and Redevelopment Authority is now closed. We are now on the Commission Ifino Chamorro. Dani Finaguian? Finaguin. Nana. Go put Finaguin. Historia. Danilala Itautotano Commission. There are no amendments to that. Madam Speaker, do you have anything you wanted to
I'd
bring
ask to
up?
bookmark this.
We bookmark that. There are no objections to bookmark. We're now the Office of Technology, OTEC. Senator Tello, no.
I'm kind of fast going from the Commission. I'd like to ask OFB, I noticed that some of the funding that was appropriated from the ESF, actually, they received close to $1.5 million from the ESF, for programs for the Commission. Was that well, that's actually new information before this budget bill was put into place. But do you know that they actually received $1.5 million from the ESF funding?
That, Senator, I don't know.
No, they did. They did. Well, it's being bookmarked. We'll discuss it later, but for the Commission to receive $1.5 million, and here we're appropriating 454 additional, it's something maybe we want to rethink.
All right, we'll have the OFB look into that and contact them and see, get some documents from them.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right? But we did bookmark that
Commission,
section.
yeah.
We're now the OTEC. There are no amendments for OTEC, page 95. We will now close OTEC. We are now on page 96, Bureau of Women's Affairs. There are no amendments for page 96. Office of Women's Affairs is now closed. We are now on Medical Referral Assistance Office. There are no amendments for page 97. It is now closed. We are now Guam Ethics
Did I ask
Commission.
for it? No.
Senator Amanda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to bookmark this section.
All right, are there no objections to bookmark? We will now bookmark Guam Ethics Commission. Okay? We are now on,
Were there any,
yes, ma'am?
were there any lapses in the medical referral office when we were locked down?
Do we have any lapses in medical referral?
Are you talking about FY20 or FY21?
21.
21? Hang on. Can you hold on for a second? Senator, if you're referring to the appropriation for FY21, I can't tell you whether or not there's true lapses simply because we're still into the fiscal year. So I don't know if there's going to be lapses.
All right. Okay, thank you.
All right?
Do they use some of this money for contracting, right? Like contracting transportation, things like that out there, lodging? Are you able to tell whether this was expended, or
No, medical
do
referral.
you show any lapses for FY20?
I would have to check on that, Senator. I can get back to you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right? Now, that being stated, we're going to bookmark medical referral until we can get that information, so all of us will have that data, okay? Guam Ethics Commission is bookmarked. We are now the legislature branch. There is no amendment for that. That being said, yes, Madam Speaker. Which one? Going backwards?
Could we just have a 1-minute recess? If you're going to keep going, I got to get the rest of my files. Sorry.
Okay.
For
So
we finished the executive branch, we're going to go forward.
Well, we're going to move forward, ma'am,
Okay,
and then
so-
because of all the bookmarks, when we get to right before we start miscellaneous, we're going to go now and capture all the bookmarks and close that completely.
Okay, so before miscellaneous provisions or miscellaneous appropriation?
A miscellaneous, I think that's chapter, hold one, that would be miscellaneous appropriation. Before we start on 108, we'll clear everything before that,
All right, thank you.
so that there's no doubt we've completed it. But I'm only going to ask my colleagues, please be ready, so when we address your bookmark, you can respond, and if, you should be ready by then. I appreciate it if you could. All right, so we're going to move on along, right, Madam Speaker? Okay, we're at Legislature Branch, Chapter 6. I see no amendments to that. That being, Madam Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any amendments right now, but I just wanted to get further clarification because earlier today it was brought to our attention that we have a 6% increase in the legislative budget this fiscal year. And I just wanted to inquire further as to why that increase. Is this a debt that we're incurring in this current term, or why would we exceed, what are we doing to get the increased amount, where's it going? Because lump sums, I assume, would have been paid out, were at the beginning of this year for last term. So why are we looking for more money moving forward then if this was already paid out?
I was told, Senator, in working with central office, one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest expense they did was on the lump sum payout. It was, like I said, it wasn't budgeted in FY21 and it wasn't budgeted in FY20. So what I was asked was whether or not if there's any way we can go ahead and replenish what's paid out from the central office fund to pay for the lump sum payment. That was one. And two was an increase basically for the cost of operation for the various senatorial offices.
With the lump sums, though, why wasn't that incorporated into the budget? Because it sounds to me that the legislature would have exceeded its budget if it couldn't fund the lump sum. I mean, I assume every employee that we hire, we have to take that into consideration because every one of them, I assume, unless they're a contractual employee, are accruing leave. Is that what happened?
To my knowledge, Senator, yes, there was no funds available to pay for that lump sum, so I would surmise that yes, somewhere along the line, that when the employees were picked up with the various senatorial offices, it did not include or did not, I would say, funds weren't kind of like put aside to pay for the lump sums.
And what was this amount? What
The
did this
total-
amount to?
Total lump sum?
Yes.
I can get that for you. Just give me a second.
And then are we doing anything different this fiscal year to make sure we're not ending up in this situation? Because to me, the legislature ends up spending money and then ends up with this bill, and somehow we're supposed to appropriate more money. It doesn't look good, folks. I mean, if there are other critical things in this budget we're not funding, it doesn't look good that the legislature is increasing its budget this year. I mean, if the administration is not, and I'm not too happy we're increasing the judiciary to additional 11% at this time. But it's just, to me, bad practice. I think we just need to call it for what it is, but I just want to make sure moving forward this fiscal year and this new term, we're not ending up in this situation because senators are expending their budget and not putting enough money aside to address the lump sum of their respective staff in their offices or in central or whatever the case may be.
Senator, in my conversation with the Chairman of Appropriations, I did advise him, to make sure that at least for the upcoming fiscal year, that there are adequate funds, to cover to these lump sums, whether the lump sum comes from the individual senatorial budgets or they come from, I guess, central office.
Well, how have they been coming in the past? I mean, I've been here before, but this has not been an issue to my knowledge in the past, so I'm kind of curious why it's an issue now.
My understanding is portion of it, some of it are paid out of each individual senatorial's budget, and in the past, I've also heard that central office was the one that picked up the tab to pay for these lump sums.
And so how are we dealing with it this term so we don't end up in this situation? Or do we need to amend the standing rules to require respective senators and central to pay the lump sum of their respective staff out of their budget so we're not increasing the legislative budget to accommodate what I'm sure you'll give us the figures, probably, I'm sure it's six figures and up, if not a couple $100,000 or so. I'm sure you'll let us know the exact amount. This is not new, colleagues. I mean, every 2 years the legislature terminates, so this is nothing new. This is not rocket science.
Senator, I hope that at least for this term, that adequate funds are being held in reserve to pay for whatever the cost is of the lump sums. That I can only hope.
Well, again, I know, Mr. Guerrero, it's not your oversight or your responsibility, but colleagues, I would advise it. It does, like I mentioned, there are things we're not funding in this budget that we'd like to see for our people. And when we're in a position to manage our own money and we're not properly managing it, it hardly puts us in a position to dictate the budget for the rest of Governor Guam when we're not fiscally responsible ourselves. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Also, I'd like to advise our colleagues that all the expenses, the Guam Legislature does not receive any federal assistance like the CARES or anything anticipated. So as we see all the measures we're taking here, that's some of the expenses also added to it to try to restore that. So if anything was to happen, and I think it also hits the upgrade to the facilities and so forth, but we can get more details. And I agree with you. We need to get a hold of it, and maybe have to change the standing rules to accommodate that section, ma'am. Senator Tello, you have any comment for the Chapter 6?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as the Oversight Chair of OFB as well, I have a question with regards to the appropriation. Last year, OFB was appropriated $439,161. This year, it's now $478,740, which is a difference of $39,579. Can you tell me why there's an increase in OFB?
Senator, to answer that question, Office of Budget, Finance and Budget has been paying its own lump sum.
I'm sorry, paying its what?
The lump sums that are paid out of the Office of Finance and Budget is coming out of the Office of Finance budget. It doesn't come from anywhere else.
Did you do that last year?
Yes, they did.
Yes, we
Okay,
did.
so why the increase? I mean, you did it last year with 439,161. Now you're doing it at 478, 470. What increased? I mean, if you did last year and you're going to be doing it this year, why the increase of $39,000?
It's to cover rent, the cost of rent, to adjust for the cost of rent. And we had a slight increase in personnel because of the benefits and everything else that went on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. There being no amendments, we will now, yes. Can you turn on your mic, please?
Probably will get voted down, but I guess just for my conscience,
Okay.
if I could make an amendment to revert the legislative budget to the 2021 fiscal year budget.
The 2021 budget? Okay, well, we'll bookmark this section then, and then we come back. Could we want to see your amendment? So we can upload it? Okay? So we'll bookmark this page 98, 99. We'll now move to page 100. Legal Services, that's Chapter 7. I don't believe we don't have any amendments to that chapter. We
If
will
I
now,
could ask you just,
you have a,
just to bookmark that, Mr. Chair.
you want to bookmark Legal Services? All right.
Were you talking about the Attorney General's office?
Yes, the
Yes,
Attorney General's
that
office.
one, yeah, thank you.
All right. We'll bookmark then Chapter 6 or Chapter 7, Legal Services. We are now on Chapter 7, Legal Services, Public Defender Services Corporation. You have an amendment? For which one? This one? All right. We do have one amendment that's proffered, and it's SB 55 MCT, Senator Torres, L19, page 102. We are in that section, Chapter 7, Legal Services, Public Defender. Senator Torres, ma'am?
Thank you. I'm proffering this amendment at the request of the Public Defender Service Corporation. They have been able to operate in the past because of their ability to retain these lapses to cover shortfalls. And so this amendment will help them continue to operate efficiently. It is an amendment to line 19, page 102, to add a new section 4 to Chapter 7, Part 2 of the bill to read, Section 4, the unexpected balance of the appropriation in Section 2 of Part 2, Chapter 7 of Public Law Number 35-99 in fiscal year 2021 shall not lapse and shall continue to be available to cover budget shortfalls in fiscal year 2022 for the Public Defender Service Corporation and/or the alternate public defender until fully expended. And I respectfully ask my colleagues for their support as they consider this amendment.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Are there anyone that would like to speak to this? There being none, do you need to close your, no need? Are there any objection? There being none, that amendment passed. You have an objection, ma'am?
I'm not objecting, I just want to ask a question. I mean, how much money are we talking about?
Huh?
What is the amount of money that we're talking about to lapse, to allow them to continue to roll over for this upcoming fiscal year? How much are we talking about?
We'll ask OFB.
I believe the amendment is to allow FY21 carryover. So if we're talking about FY21 carryover, I do not know what the amount is until after the fiscal year.
Do we have a general idea of what's in this account? Obviously, if they want to protect it to roll it over, does the sponsor of this amendment know how much money we're talking about or about the approximate amount?
I believe OFB has a letter from the Public Defender Service Corporation discussing their budgetary shortfalls. Would you like to refer to that?
Yes, we'll have the,
Yeah, give me a moment, I'll try to.
let's take a quick recess while he looks for the letter. That's basically talking about the shortfall, and they're just asking to roll over so they can try to minimize their shortfall. All right? So we're in recess at this time. All right, the Committee of the Whole,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the lapse funds that we're talking about, if we're regarding the attorney's fee for indigenous defense, FY20 lapse funds, there's a total of $299,675. The budget shortfall that they're citing is roughly about $365,621. So if we take that amount and subtract it from the carryover of FY20, they're saying this is shortfall of $65,946. So if you, I'm assuming that if we allowed any lapses to be generated in FY21, those lapses will surely help offset this potential shortfall.
If a point of information also, the public defender is informing me that their approximate shortfall for the upcoming fiscal year will be about $200,000 between the two offices. So any lapse funds from this fiscal year will only help to offset that.
all right. Senator Brown, did that answer your question? It started, they're basically, when they do get the rollover, they're still going to be short, but they're trying to find a way to minimize the amount that they're
Is it
short.
short from their current appropriations that we're looking at for FY 2022? Is there a need greater than what we're appropriating here in the Budget Act for 2022?
I'm assuming that the letter, the amount they're reflecting on the letter is comparing what is being budgeted in the bill, and that's what they're saying they're going to have a potential shortfall.
Okay, I appreciate the information. At least we know what it is that we're allowing
Yes.
to roll over and for what purpose.
All right, thank you. Senator Tello, you had a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is for Public Defender Service Corp. This year, we are appropriating $6,110,159. Last year, we appropriated $5,834,210. That's a difference of an increase of to this year's budget at $119,839. That's $189,000, yeah.
And your point, Senator
Well,
Tello?
my point is, why the increase? I mean, we increased it, and what is the reason for that increase? I mean,
Oh,
we're
you-
giving them lapses to utilize for lapses, but yet we're increasing their
Okay,
budget.
let's start first with the difference between 21 and 22. The
Right.
increase, you wanted to know why we're giving them the increase, right?
Right,
Let's
right.
start with that.
Okay.
And then we can address the amendment that gives them the rollover, so they can cover more of the areas they're having a shortfall. Steve, you can answer why the difference between 21 and 22, and then we can move on with the amendment.
Again, Senator, remember last year was a very lean year when it came to personnel. We basically didn't even fund any vacancies, so we're allowing them to hire a few vacancies. We're also covering the cost of an increase, I believe, in office rent. There are some contractual obligations that are pending, that they want to incur, but are waiting at least additional funding. And of course, other personnel matters such as drug testing in order to hire these personnel. So 100,000 is, the amount of 100,000 is really not much when you're talking about a $6 million budget.
All right?
It is, if you're talking about paying for someone's salary, it is.
Yes.
If we can use that funding to pay someone else's salary, so, yeah.
No, but
Okay, thank you.
I'm just saying that the 100,000.
100,000 is a lot of money for a lot of
Yes.
people,
And-
regardless.
And it would help public defender to cover costs in the upcoming fiscal years,
Another
which they
agency.
didn't have last year.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
All right, thank you. Anyone else like to speak on the amendment? None. Do you need to close on, or, no? You need to close, Madam Speaker, do you
Yeah.
want to speak to the
Sorry,
amendment?
can you just repeat what you said they had in the account? It's both of these? What we are allowing to lapse or to be used next year, the lapses?
299. 299.
Yeah, the amount that I'm identifying based on their letter, they wanted to roll over.
No, how much is in the lap? Oh, you're basing it on their letter? You don't
Yes.
know yourself?
No.
Oh,
We don't
okay,
know
how
them
much?
to the end of the year?
All right.
So the amount that they're asking to roll over is approximately $299,675.
Did they say from which account? Is it from public defender or the alternate? Or
They say
together?
attorney's fees for indigenous defense.
Okay. All right. The only reason I'm asking is because, when we had earlier received the substitute bill, we sent this to those agencies and asked if they had any issues with it. And I know they had asked at the time that lapses be allowed. And I did ask OFB, and he pretty much was told, we are not going to be allowing lapses this year for any agency. But I see we are now allowing that for different agencies, not just this one. So I'm happy that we're able to allow the lapses for these. And at that time, they were only estimated 100,000, so I'm glad that there's even more than that right now. Thank you.
Right. Madam Speaker, when we stated we're not going to allow it, we didn't want to put it in the budget up front. If no one asks, then it's moved as it's not being allowed. That's the only reason why we didn't put it in. We don't want to make it be the norm. All right? Are there any objection to this? Oh, wait. Yeah. Are there any, do you need to close on this one? Not needed, right?
No, all I want to point out is that the request was made because the amount that they requested for their operational needs were in excess of what they were appropriated. And so it's just allowing them to use whatever lapses are to carry
Understood.
them. Yeah, basically. So I
Thank you.
appreciate everyone's support. Thank you.
Yes. Are there any objection to this amendment? There being none, motion passes. This completes Chapter 7, Legal Services, Public Defender, the Services Corporation. We are now at the mayor, ma'am. Senator Shelton.
Can I please place a bookmark at the public defender?
All right, then and there are no objection to, we'll bookmark the public defender? So that's still an issue. Okay, we are now on Chapter 8, Mayor's Council of Guam. I don't see, we do have one amendment, and this is from Senator Pt.2. It is SB 55 JPT, line 20, L20, P104. Of course, 104. Okay, so Senator Pt.2, if you can address your amendment, we are My colleagues, we're on Chapter 8, Mayor's Council of Guam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to proffer to add to the bill, Section 6, continuing appropriation of prior year obligation authorization. Notwithstanding any provision of law, rule, and regulation, the allotted but unexpended balance of funds appropriated to the Mayor's Council of Guam for FY2021 shall not lapse and shall continue to be available for prior and current year obligation until fully expended. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Would anybody like to speak on this? I see none. Do you need to still close on this, or we'll go ahead
I
and go?
just wanna add, Mr. Chair, that the only reason, like every year, the Mayor's Council, as a former mayor also for 12 years, we usually would save our money for that particular fiscal year and carry it over to the following year, because what we usually would do is we purchase heavier equipment for our activities and operation within the Mayor's Council. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Are there any objections to this amendment? I see no hands. You have an objection, ma'am?
No.
No? You would like to speak? Because you already closed.
Yeah.
Okay? So, are there any objection to the amendment? If none, motion passes. We are now at, no, we closed that. Okay.
No,
Oh,
wait.
you still wanted to speak on the mayor's?
I'm,
Okay. Good. There, but Senator Cello,
I'm raising my hand for the mayor's, yeah.
there was no amendments, but you want to just speak about it, okay? But we'll let the speaker first because she raised her hand. She wasn't objecting to the amendment. Speaker, you want to speak about the
Yes,
mayor's council?
I would just like OFB to explain again. The mayors are still being funded by the Guam Highway Fund. This one is in the amount of 2.8 million. And when we were at Department of Public Works, you said that we took out half, which was 1.9 million, or I thought around 2 million. And it must be not exactly half, right? Is that why it's 2.8? Just checking.
When I said have, the intent was to move at least most of the appropriation out onto the highway fund, because, based on the audit report that the auditor put out, that the highway fund was not, the mayor's council was not the proper agency to be utilizing highway funds. But because, again, of what we found out of how much money is being used to subsidize personnel in the mayor's office, we just couldn't move the whole amount. We had to leave some there, and
Yes.
hopefully by next year, move the remaining part out. So it wasn't exactly a 50-50 split,
Okay.
but we did take out 1.9 million out of the mayor's council from the Guam Highway Fund and moved it to Public Works, and kept the balance, I believe, of 2.8 with mayor's
Yes,
council.
so you gave them less from the highway fund, but you ended up giving them more from the general fund, so that their appropriation overall went up $1 million for the mayors.
That's to cover the requirements to fund those warm bodies that were funded out of the highway fund.
No, but the overall went up 1 million.
Yes. You're talking about the overall appropriation level?
Yes. Right?
Let me check.
Yeah.
Senator, to answer your question, the reason why we increased it by $1 million is to cover the warm bodies and additional costs in utilities.
Okay. So additional personnel, you're saying, for the mayors? What?
The warm bodies, the people that are there right now.
All right.
I would assume, Senator, yes, they are additional bodies simply because the cost of personnel rose
Yes.
in 21. So
Right.
I could safely say it's an additional warm bodies that we have to cover, yes.
Okay. And then, I'm just checking, it seems like we moved this 307,000 from what used to be called Public Safety and Social Education Programs to be part of the Operations, Maintenance, Beautification, Public Safety Programs now. I don't have any objection, but I'm just curious. Yeah. I have no objection. That's, so the 1 million additional appropriation to mayors is for additional staff that they acquired between FY21 and FY22? Or are you funding vacancies?
Right now, Senator, only warm bodies and also to cover additional costs and utilities.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Tello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I wanted to find out as well, because the Mayor's Council had an additional $1 million increase. Thank you for answering the questions.
All right, being there are no other amendments to the Mayor's Council, Chapter 8, we will now close this chapter. We are now on Chapter 9, Public Accountability Standards and Practice, the Office of the Public Accountability. We do not have any amendments for that office. We will now close. Anyone would like to speak about the OPA? If not, we will close. Yes, ma'am.
If you could
Madam
just
Speaker.
explain the change from FY21.
Oh, the increase? Okay.
There is an additional $423,352 increase over the governor's request. That was due to additional staff increase. That was due to additional staff for auditing the increase of federal grants due to the pandemic. And two, the increase authorized the $341,000 was increased due to the authorized level due to additional staff.
All right, Madam Speaker, are we good? Okay. There being there is no amendment for that section, Chapter 9, Public Accountability Standards and Practice. We'll take a quick recess because there is a floor amendment that's floating in the air right now for Part 2 of Public Accountability and Standards and Practice. That's the Guam Board of Accountancy. But at least the Office of Public Accountability, we will close. And we will keep the page 106 open, but we'll be in recess at this time. Thank you.
Why can't we just finish the miscellaneous stuff? Yeah.
The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized. We are on page 106.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My amendment is found on your drive, SB 55J SSA L 13P 106. It is to add 1 to Section 1 of Part 2 of Chapter 9 of the bill to read, 1, continuing appropriation authorization, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, unexpended balance of the Guam Board of Accountancy Fund, revenue appropriated to the Guam Board of Accountancy for fiscal year 2021 and prior shall not lapse and shall be continue to be available until fully expended. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator San Augustine. Anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? Are there any objections to the amendment? No objections. Amendment passes.
My colleagues, there's no other amendments for page 106. We will now close page 106, which is part 2 of Public Accountability and Standards and Practice, Guam Board of Accountancy. We are now on chapter 10, Guam Visitors Bureau. Are there any amendments? There are no amendments for GVB. Senator Ada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To OFB, what were the estimated numbers on this when we came up with the, on the Tourist Attraction Fund to come up with the 14 million?
You're referring to estimated tourist arrivals. When we did an analysis, we got multiple scenarios. One at the lowest being 70,000, and these numbers actually are being produced by GVB. We took 70,000, I believe we took 100,000, and we took the max at 130. So the amount that we're using to project the TAF is being very optimistic at 130. That's how we came up with the TAF revenues.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, I was just asking OFB on the numbers here, and you know, it just comes to a concern because if we notice what's been going on lately with the governor now imposing her executive order as to, you know, unvaccinated individuals cannot enter hotels and things like that. The effects on the Airbnb program that has, and then also the bill that's going through Congress, or that they're trying to get through Congress, that will not allow anyone that's unvaccinated coming into the United States or its territories. So I'm not sure what the impact would be to the Tourist Attraction Fund, and if we still want to keep and, you know, I guess be optimistic that we're going to hit these numbers. Just something to consider and something to be aware of.
Yes. Thank you, Senator Ada, because it's coming from their own fund. Once they impact and they get a shortfall, don't look at us. Go get your tourism and bring them in. That would be my statement. Thank you, Senator Ada.
Yeah, but I think in the any special funds, like Director Burns said, the coverage would have to come from the general fund. Am I correct?
That's correct, Senator.
So I'm just saying, again, we just have to be very mindful to what's being played out here and what the effect would be if they don't hit that target and
All right.
they take it from the general fund.
You wanted
Thank
a bookmark so you can prepare an amendment? No?
Not at all.
All right.
I just wanted to make everyone aware of that.
Yes. Senator Tello, you have anything you wanted to comment about GVB?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, could you tell me other than, or OFB, can you tell me other than Guam Visitors Bureau, where else is the Tourist Attraction Fund funding?
OFB?
Yes, Senator Tello. A portion of the TAF in the amount of 20,000 is being appropriated to Department of Administration to cover the TAF audit. And I believe 1.2 million is being set aside to pay for the bond,
I'm sorry, Pete.
to pay for the bond, the debt service on the hot bond, and then the balance is going all to GBB.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you.
That's good? Okay. Anyone else would like to comment about GVB? Madam Speaker?
Yes, I just have a couple comments. One is that we're doubling the appropriation from FY21 to FY22, meaning we're very optimistic that we're going to double our visitor arrivals. And I have no problem with that because it's clear that the ARP can be used for shortfalls in tourism industries. It's exactly this type of optimism that I would, like to be extended to the BPT as well, so that we can put cash into the tax refund reserves and pay those refunds faster. But my second question is that Section 2 of this bill puts some of the TAF into a rainy day fund. And last year, because of the dismal projections of tourists, they had asked that we not put any money in the tourist attraction fund. In fact, the rainy day fund, in fact, that they would be able to use the rainy day fund. And so I'm just curious if this is GVB's request that we put money back into the rainy day fund again. Because the 14 million still puts them way below, FY19 or.
Yes, Senator. If you recall, last year's budget, their actual budget was supposed to be somewhere over $9 million. But because we had the issue with the bond, that we didn't put in supposedly the correct amount to pay the bond, and it was, like I said, it was at the 11th hour, we were notified about this. I went to GVB and I asked GVB, could you please help us at least defer $3 million of your $9 million appropriation, with the assumption that once the bond was refinanced and whatever savings was derived, that the savings would go back to GVB. It is my understanding, unfortunately, they have yet to receive that money, and my understanding, the reason why they're not getting it is simply because the TAF is not tracking at the level that is estimated for this year. So in reality, although it may seem like we're doubling the appropriation, it's really not doubling. We are giving them about $5 million more rather than the 9. It's only to get them up to par where they were supposed to have been last year, had the $3 million be reimbursed back to them. So yes, we are giving them an increase, about $5 million to get up to the 14 from the 9.
But weren't they at 6? They were at 6 last year.
Yes, we appropriated it. At the last minute, we appropriated $6 million to them. But remember, it was under the understanding that once the bond was refinanced, whatever savings we would get, which supposedly was supposed to be $3 million,
Right.
would go back to GVB, which would have put their budget actually at $9 million.
Yeah, if we had
Yes,
if there were saving, and you're saying they never got that, so now we're, okay.
yes.
So your revenue your visitor projections, what percent increase are you looking at?
Well, I am.
Visitor arrivals numbers, yes.
I am-
Which number did you settle on?
The 130,000
Visitors
visitors for the year.
versus what was this year's? Yeah, what's that?
What we're tracking right now?
No, what was the projection for this year? I'm just trying to get the percentage increase of visitor arrivals that you're predicting. Was it 88 or 44? Or something.
Senator, in our conversation with GVB last year, we used a 400,000 tourist arrival number, which was half basically of FY 2020. Because remember in FY19, it was 1.6 million. In FY20, when the pandemic hit, the first 4 months we were doing well, then all of a sudden it suddenly crashed. And in the first 4 months of 2020, I believe total visitor arrival was somewhere almost up 700,000 just in the first 4 months. In the remaining 8 months, I believe we didn't even hit 100,000. So when GBB did their calculation, when we estimated the FY21 budget, they said, okay, at least half of the 800,000. So they gave a 400,000 number.
Okay, so you predicted 400,000, and we appropriated 6 plus the bond amounts, and then, but this year you're only predicting 130,000, but we're going to.
Okay, the numbers, the tourist numbers that you're mentioning, Senator, is not ours. It's coming from GVB. We rely on them for this type of information because, I'm assuming they're the best body right now that would know how to calculate and how to determine the visitor's arrival. So we worked with them and we told them, I said, we weren't even, we weren't even close last year. So what is your estimate for this year? And they said they gave us a range, anywhere from 70 to 130,000. Now, again, may I just remind it, this was working so 2-3 months ago, when everything was looking positive, where things were starting to open up, things were starting to move. They're telling us that they're talking to the airlines, everything else. So it started to look a little bit more brighter. And then all of a sudden, what's happening lately? Gosh, that must be something that we didn't know it was going to happen.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to. Maybe it's too simple, and I'm just trying to follow how we went from 6 plus the 3 and refinancing savings. That's $9 million, with a 400,000 visitor projections, to now $14 million, yet a lower amount of visitor arrival projections. That's what I'm trying to make sense of. That's what's not making sense to me. How are we getting more money with less visitors? That's what it looks like. Oh, and did they request that the money be put into the rainy day fund? I didn't get the answer on that one.
Senator, right now we're attracting almost about 40,000 tourists with about 12 million collection. So, if I take 40,000 tourists at 12 million, then, even if we only reach 80,000 next year, using the same computation rate, we should at least hit 15.
Okay, but you understand my question, right?
Absolutely,
Why
I do.
our visitors are projecting less visitors but more money? Okay, and then
Yes.
what about the rainy day fund? They're asking that this money be put in the rainy day fund? I'm only asking that because they specifically asked that they be able to use it last year.
Yeah, on the rainy day fund, Senator, we just went ahead and followed what was appropriate last year. Again, this money is only available to them, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the board is the one that decides how this money is utilized.
Okay, Speaker?
Okay, I guess
Oh,
so.
and just one thing, it's not an outright appropriation, it's actually an allocation. So, they may set it aside, or if they wish not to, they don't have to.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We have no amendment on page 107. We will now close Senator Dueñas.
Mr. Chairman, I just like you to bookmark this as well.
Bookmark that? Okay, we'll bookmark.
And in response to an earlier comment, with the new issuance of an order coming out, there should be no optimism for the BPT.
Yes.
Just read the
Okay.
new update.
All right.
We've gone way backwards.
Okay, we bookmark page 107. My colleagues, we are now on page 108.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
earlier when you and I were switching chairs, I did not have the opportunity to bookmark a certain section. If I can please bookmark the OPA section, Chapter 9.
Yes, I forgot to bring that up. Are there any objections to OPA being bookmarked? There being none, it is bookmarked. Okay, back now, we're on page 108. We're on chapter 11, miscellaneous appropriation. This is the section with the retirees. Do we have any amendment? Do we have any amendment for this? Page 108? You do? From 108 to 115. My colleagues were checking if there's any amendment from page 108 to page 115. There is one, right? We have several. So if we could just stand by for a minute or two, I'll get the... My colleagues, we have 3 amendments. We have 4 amendments. And we'll have to address Senator Moylan's amendment first, because I know that Senator Ruggiero is on his way back. All right? And that's, you have 2 of them, Senator Moylan, SB 55 L19, that L9 to 11, page 115, and then you have one from line 12, page 115. Okay? We only have 4 minutes. Yes, Madam Speaker?
Yes, before we get to those pages, in the early pages, they're talking about the supplemental annuity, the COLA for the retirees, and I just want to make sure, there are a couple instances where the total goes down, and if OFB can just assure us that, why it's gone down in those areas.
Yes, Senator, these numbers, the amounts that are reflected in the bill, these were all confirmed numbers by retirement.
right. Is that like less retirees?
Yes, if it's less retirees, the number would go down. If it's more, it would go up. But the numbers did come, and I did check with retirement. I think the last time we checked with them was about a month and a half ago before we
Okay.
put this together.
All right.
And these are the numbers they
Okay.
quoted.
Sí, just want to see.
All right, thank you. Now we will proceed with Senator Moylan's. Senator Parrish, do you have an amendment, or you just want to comment
Just a
about the
follow-up-
chapter?
A follow-up question. So the numbers that were provided from retirement, does that include expected retirees for the year in addition to the ones that are current?
It is my understanding, Senator, these are only warm bodies on board.
No, I'm talking about the retirement benefits.
Yes.
So are they basically retirees? But does this number include also expected, those that are expected to retire in
No,
this year? It doesn't include that.
these are just current individuals employed with the government of Guam and does not include anticipated retirees.
Is
I
that
think that's
standard?
lesson learned. Remember the last budget? It included anticipated retirees, and then we end up appropriating that funds.
Yeah, but then what if they do retire during this fiscal year? How does that, how do we cover that?
I'm not too sure exactly how retirement handles those type of situations. The only thing I know is that the rates and the amounts that are being appropriated are strictly for those individuals currently employed in the government of Guam, both as active and retirees.
Thank you. If they're listening to this, hopefully they have any adjustments to make, should they make any. Thank you.
What was your question one more time? You were concerned about if somebody retires and we didn't appropriate, how do we handle that?
Yes, correct. And maybe
All
if you
right.
can confirm with the retirement fund to
No,
see if they,
absolutely. I'll pose the question to them.
Okay.
thank you.
All right, now we will move to Senator Moylan's amendments, folks. We are now at Senator Moylan's amendment, and it's on SB 55, JCM L 9 to 11, page 115, which is the last page of that chapter. All right? Senator Moylan, you may begin with your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So colleagues, this amendment basically does is scratch the Pacific Islands Development Bank. So as it reads now, it's the governor has the authority to deposit such funds necessary into the Pacific Island Development Bank and authorized under the Public Law 22-148. So that public law is, it states they can deposit $1 million. We know from past history with this bank, it has not always been funded for many years. But recently, we understand that it's been funded, this will be the third consecutive year. Initially, I recall that the amount was placed in the bill, the budget bill back in the 35th, and it showed an amount of $1 million. And then the second time it came around, it didn't show any amount, and that's where we're seeing this read, to deposit such funds as necessary. Like now, we don't know what that amount could be, but I think OFB would have to budget $1 million to do this. The Pacific Island Development Bank is a group of banks. We have a headquarters here at the Bank of Guam, and we are members of it. But it's not that you have to maintain a deposit every year, just like what the wording in the budget is doing. It says whatever funds you feel necessary. So we haven't always deposited in the past, and I'm not saying that this isn't a good organization for those who could benefit from it, but it's not going to close the Pacific Islands Development Bank because there's other members involved as well. And there could be existing money in that account now, which we don't even know how much there is. And we can confirm that with OFB, but from my understanding, the AS 400 doesn't tell us how much money is in the Pacific Islands Development Bank, because that's a separate account. With that in mind, and considering what we've been trying to do so hard here with the budget is look for money to give our departments necessary to survive, to pay their overtime or pay their bills or hire more people to provide their required mandates. This could be really the time that we can consider is removing for this budget the mandate to place up to, well, according to the Public Law 24-148, $1 million. So I'm asking favorable on this to just scratch this for now, and we can look at it again in the following budget. And if I can, Mr. Chair, if I can ask Mr. Guerrero there, if he can confirm if he knows how much money is in the OFB Bank, Pacific Islands Development Bank, I'm sorry.
Yes, Senator. Unfortunately, I don't have access to that particular account if it does exist. Right now, there is just no money. I mean, I can't say whether or not there's any funds in that account.
Okay. Would you know if money will be transferred if we leave this in the budget bill? Are you able to tell if money will go to the Pacific Islands Development Bank?
The only time I can tell that, Senator, is we go into the AS 400 and see whether or not there's a provision in the law or there is already existing funds out there in an account specifically set aside for this. I do not know, but we can check. I mean, I can gradually go and check.
I'm sorry. If with this in the budget bill, we're basically setting aside in our general fund, I would suppose, $1 million for this purpose.
The provision in the bill, Senator, right now, if you notice, there's no dollar amount. So if they put in $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, that is what they're going to put aside, I believe, as a deposit for this. Now, in terms of, you reference $1 million. If that's the amount that's going to be put in, then that's the amount that's going to be put in. The only problem at this time is that I do not have that type of access, detailed access, to find out whether or not such funds are deposited for this.
So if the governor decides not to put in up to the law saying 22-148, $1 million, which right now the law says you can, then she can use the $1 million anywhere else the governor so wishes, I suppose.
Yes, if she's identifying $1 million somewhere, okay, to put in this, then of course she's taking it from that particular appropriation. But right now, this authorization is just allowing her to deposit and set aside up to $1 million for this purpose.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Madam Chair, so considering this, that we don't have the opportunity to see if this money will be deposited into Pacific Islands Development Bank, any knowledge of what amount would actually be deposited into, and that we're pretty much setting aside the possibility of $1 million put into Pacific Islands Development Bank, But if it's not, it could be used anyplace else. At the governor's consent of $1 million, I really appreciate my colleagues' support for now in this budget bill just to scratch it, and that's what this amendment does. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Moylan. Anyone on the amendment, page 115, line 9 to 11? Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, I prefer that this stays in the appropriations, the Pacific Island Development Bank authorization to deposit. I just want to remind everyone that Guam was a charter member of this program, and it has value to not only Guam, but neighbors, our neighbor associations in Micronesia, and it is that sort of development project that allows people to develop, to go into businesses that have some benefit to their communities. I had the opportunity to attend several APIL meetings and understand how this works and how it benefits true community members and the economies that they live in. And so I think that it is a worthwhile project. It's something that has had a lot of benefits. I think Guam people tend to take advantage of it disproportionately or in greater proportions. I don't mean to be negative. I actually think it's encouraging. But, let's just remember, too, at a time when we need people to continue to thrive, these sorts of opportunities are worthwhile to keep in there. And I would, respectfully object, because I think it's one of those things that Guam fought very hard to implement in the beginning, many, many years ago. It is a program that is there. And if there are really any questions, I know that the audit hasn't come out, and a lot of that has to do with the COVID situation. But any questions about the PIDB can be asked by the PDIE, and it's not like they wouldn't be very willing to provide information. But for the most part, I think that it is sound, it is a very legitimate thing, but mostly it impacts and has great value to our island and our island neighbors in Micronesia. And I would encourage us to just keep it there to the extent that we can fund it. The governor is authorized to fund it. It may be very little, it may be a little bit more, but to just opt out of it as a charter member, I think it's not a good faith or good face move on Guam's part. So I would encourage us to keep it and object to this respectfully.
So Masi, Senator Torres. Anyone else on the amendment? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I think we should go and verify, because I understand when the original language, again, it was put in a legislature before mine. I know former Governor Gutierrez was very active when he was in APIL in supporting the PIDB. And I believe the language had required all the key charter members to contribute a certain amount to develop the bank and put the seed money. And I believe that figure, as Senator Moylan had mentioned, was $1 million. But I also believe Guam has since contributed to this fund. So I think we just need to verify what that amount is, because a number of years ago I did speak with Aaron Pollock, who was the head of PIDB at the time, and he did tell me, this was after I left the legislature, that the Guam has contributed to this account. As a matter of fact, we were one of the founding members, and the other islands, which is, people would think it would be totally in reverse, but our neighboring islands in Micronesia, a number of them had contributed their funds, and Guam, as one of the founding members, did not. So I think we just simply need to go back and verify to what amount, if not the full $1 million, perhaps has since been already contributed by the government of Guam to PIDB. It shouldn't be difficult to find out. I mean, they're headquartered here on Guam. And verify that. There might not be a need for a continuing appropriation, as this language has and exists in the budget, the current budget bill. So I think we just need to find out. And then that might collectively address the concerns of all parties here.
Yes, Senator, it was requested in the executive budget, so we just went ahead and put it in without actually putting an amount. I think what she's looking for is just maybe just the authority to go ahead and deposit whatever money is available that she can.
No, I
into the-
understand, but I'm saying there might not be a need to. I think we simply should ask PIDB currently, what has Guam's contribution been? Because my understanding from certainly my years at APIL, I served 2 terms as APIL president, was that all the founding members were to contribute a certain amount to provide seed money for these loans under PIDB. And I believe Guam has made contributions to PIDB. So we need to find out, has Guam already contributed to that $1 million mark? And I believe if we have, then at least the concern Senator Moylan has will be addressed, and we're not having an open-ended language of appropriation of some unknown amount if Guam has already contributed it. And if it has it contributed the full $1 million so far? That might address everyone's collective concern.
I will definitely follow up on that, Senator. I'll see what information I can get for you on that.
Appreciate it. Thank you very
You're
much,
welcome.
Mr. Guerrero. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown.
Madam Chair, point of information.
Point of information, Senator Moylan.
I have the Public Law 22-148. It reads that the governor, on behalf of the government of Guam, shall make, the first one is, make payment of an initial subscription to additional capital stock of the bank of the sum equivalent to $100,000 in accordance with the terms and agreement. So that was the initial payment. And then the authorization of appropriation and payment subscription, $1 million are authorized to be approved without fiscal year limitations for the purchase of 1,000 shares of capital stock. So, you know, I think if we're not paying into it this time or for this budget, it's not removing us necessarily as a member because sometimes you just can't or you have other priorities. And this bank will, the Pacific Islands Development Bank, Guam is probably the largest contributor, but we're not the only contributor. So what I'm really looking at is to utilize for now, up to what this bill authorizes, for us to look at the usage for our own government in whichever departments folks want to utilize it in. And then at some other time, the future budget, we can relook at it. I do believe this is helpful, but at this time, I think we have other priorities we may want to look at. And then if the governor's true, we don't know if the governor will well, it's in her budget, so I suppose the governor will do so. But if not, or the total amount, we don't know, so where would be the extra or any leftover of that $1 million that we're putting aside for this, since AS 400 doesn't show it. So it's like, you know, of course we can trust, or we can just say for now, let's put this one aside and utilize the funding where we feel fit for our agencies here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. On the amendment, Senator Teichel, you are recognized.
Just Masi, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to talk on PIDB. And I had the opportunity to represent Guam at the PIDB Bank's meetings, one particular in Kosrae. And it was brought there that the funding needed was actually, they were asking all the members, charter members, to contribute $1 million. And that was the last I've heard of it. Guam did not provide that funding. And then, of course, there was an amendment, or not an amendment, there was a move to provide the governor the authority for $1 million in the previous budget. Now, you know, the author of this amendment is correct. Every year there is like a dues that is paid to PIDB. It's not just for businesses, but this is also for the ability for people to take loans out from this bank to build homes. And it was brought to my attention that majority of those taking advantage of the bank's loan program was mostly everyone but Guam. utilizing it. I think, Madam Chair, if we get the information with regard to how, if that 1 million was already realized and contributed, because I do know that the majority of other, but it's FSM area, Palau, Marshall Islands, they did contribute it, their funding amount. But yeah, I think it's important we find out if the $1 million was already spent, because if you ask right now, if you ask the other islands, if they're able to even contribute the dues of 100,000 every year, if that's even being made, and I think it's a little bit more than 100,000 now, because the PDIB bank, I think they made a motion to increase that amount. So it's important to find out, but of course we can't find out what's in the bank itself, just if the payment was made. So yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to the answer.
Thank you very much, Senator Titagui. Anyone else on the amendment? Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point the body's attention to messages and communications. There was an audit, sorry, not an audit, an annual report, 2019 annual report that reported that Pacific Islands Development Bank, they grew their loans from 15.3 million in 2018 to 16.6 million in 2019. So that was a 9% growth. Guam's total loans equated to $1.7 million. So that's the latest that I see in the messages and communications. It was submitted January 26, 2021. So this was for 2019.
Thank you for that information, Senator Perez. Anyone on the amendment? On the amendment,
Is there anyone else? Madam Chair,
a point of inquiry?
well, no, I just think it would be helpful, as mentioned earlier, if we could get the information, then it would put all of us in a better position to make a decision. I'd hate to see the, amendment voted up or down without that information, because I certainly would not vote in favor of it until I received the information. But I certainly understand the concern of Senator Moylan's position. But I think it'd be helpful to make the decision based on information of knowing what has Guam contributed and where we are. If we had a specific amount and it was limited to that, maybe then that's something we could look at differently versus, as Senator Moylan mentioned, this very open-ended appropriation of some unknown amount that we're not aware of. If we could come back to it and
There
once
is a
more information's
request
available.
for more information before acting on this amendment. I will ask the author if you'd like to set it aside or call for the vote. There has been an objection. There's a point of information. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, in terms of the usage, I had made a point that the number of consumer loans were high by Guam, and I do have a certain number that supports that, so I just wanted to, make the body aware that I'm actually looking at a listing of actual loans where a great majority of them were taken out by Guam. We're the second biggest beneficiary of this program based on the information that I was able to gather about the PIDB. So that's the point I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you very much, Senator Torres. We will take a short recess. The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. I'll recognize the Office of Finance and Budget to share some information as requested.
Thank you. Um, uh, This is information we got through a letter that was sent by Mr. Christopher A. Cruz. He's the President and Chief Executive Officer with the Pacific Island Development Bank. The letter is dated January 26, 2021. And the gist of this letter basically just says that based on their bank's 2019 audit report, total capital investment that Guam put into the bank thus far is about $1 million. It has distribute loans in the amount of $1,734,203. Of that, total consumer loans was about $199,161. Real estate loans was $71,564, and commercial loans was $1,463,478. So a total amount of $1.734203 that has been dispersed by the bank for Guam loans. So that goes to Senator Brown asking, what is the status? How much was deposited? How much of the money has been utilized? How much has Guam been benefited from? So I believe that our initial deposit of $1 million, we have thus been able to secure $1.7 million of loans to, people of Guam.
Thank you very much,
Madam
Director
Chair?
Guerrero.
If I may further that, was there any amount on how much is paid yearly on dues for the PIDB bank? What the yearly dues is?
Are you referring to annual dues required to be part of the member of the Pacific Island Development Bank?
Well, usually, yes, every country contributes a dues fee, a yearly fee.
I'm not aware of an actual fee or due that's due for this. All I'm aware of is what the law says is whatever you contribute and deposit into the bank entitles you to draw against or be provided loans for business development.
And so far, according to this, then we did contribute the $1 million.
According to the 2019 annual report, Guam has capital investment of $1 million, yes.
Thank you very much, Director. Anyone else on the amendment?
Madam Chair, can you just, the person who was asking this information is not in the room, just indisposed for 1 minute. If you can allow her to get that information.
Okay. Anyone else on the amendment?
Well, I'll ask her if she can talk to Steve then.
Okay.
Madam Chair, maybe just a brief
We'll take a
recess?
quick recess.
Thank you.
The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. Anyone on the Moylan Amendment to page 115, lines 9 through 11? Senator Moylan, would you like to close?
Madam Chair, with the additional information, I'd just like to put this one aside for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, you are setting your amendment aside. Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Moylan, you are still recognized. You have another amendment.
Madam Chair, in lieu of time, did you want me to proceed or?
You can proceed with your amendment. The time is 6:25 p.m. and we'll go until 7 tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Nelson, a point of inquiry.
Yes, just to understand the rules of engagement here. When he makes a motion to withdraw his amendment or set aside, what does that mean? And are we voting on it, or is we're just going to do a request to set aside, and it's set aside?
All right, we will clarify. Can I get a motion from Senator Moylan to suspend discussion on his amendment to page 115, lines 9 through 11?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I request to make a motion to suspend my discussion on page 115, line 9 through 11 regarding Section 7 Pacific Islands Development Bank. Madam Chair.
Are there any objections?
Is it withdrawn or just, we're going to come back to it?
Suspending discussion, so setting it aside.
So we're going to come back to it? Like a bookmark?
Like a bookmark. Suspended. Discussion is suspended. On the motion, no objection, motion passes.
Senator Moylan, we still have one more amendment from you. It's 6:29 at this time. Your amendment, Senator Moylan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment, as well as on page 115, line 12, it's amendment number SB55 JCM. Let's give the colleagues time to find it.
Yeah.
I'll move on. It's to add a new section 8 to chapter Miscellaneous and Appropriations to read as follows. Section 8, Budget for Executive Security. That no more than $250,000 is hereby authorized.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Nelson, can you state your point of order?
Forgive me, I didn't want to step all over him, but just, he said the first part of what the amendment is, but he didn't finish the other end. So can you continue with the file name before we discuss the amendment, so we know what amendment we're talking about?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So the amendment is SB55 JCM L12 P115 COTW9. Okay. So this is adding Section 8, the budget for executive security. No more than $250,000 is hereby authorized to be transferred from the budget appropriated to the Guam Police Department, which is pursuant to Chapter 5M of this Act, to the Office of the Governor pursuant to Chapter 5A of this Act, for the purpose of providing executive security to the Governor and the Lieutenant Governor. So what I'm asking in this section is that we understand the Governor is provided security by our Guam Police Department, but as of now, we have no budget on that amount. If by placing a budget of $250,000, we're allowing the Guam Police Department to utilize their monies in their current budget elsewhere and not have to underproject or overproject of what they can and cannot use in their budget. I think this would allow the police department, which is really could use a lot more in funding, the ability to act on what we have provided for them by reducing one of their expenses, or not necessarily reducing, but at least capping for them so they understand what their budget limits are, whereby they can use the remaining of their funds for what we know is a great shortage of personnel or other things and equipments that they need, better vehicles, fuel for their vehicles as well. So I think this bill will be really assisting the Guam Police Department with what minimum budget they do have to work for by setting a budget for their usage on executive security. And then in this case, their customer basically is our governor, and for the governor to work with this budget, and if necessary, she has her additional budget to utilize if it's not enough. But at least $250,000 that GPD has to work with to provide that service to the governor's office or to the governor. So this, I think, will be helpful rather than having no cap at all. We've attempted before to have this all come out of the governor's budget, but that didn't happen. So at least this time, let's set an amount for the Guam Police Department and for the governor there. So it's called a budget. That's our bill, and we're budgeting this expense at least. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Would any of my colleagues like to speak to this amendment? I'm looking for a hand. Senator Torres, ma'am?
My question to the proffer is, why 250,000? Are you going on a historic number of what an expenditure normally is for an executive security detail, number one? And then number two, by transferring it to the office of the governor, does this police officer or officers then become under the governor's staffing pattern? I don't understand. If it's a prohibition against expending no more than, I can understand that, as opposed to transferring money to someone's account so that that person will be paid from that account. Is that the intent? To not only cap it, but make them now part of the staffing pattern of the governor's office?
Senator Moylan, do you yield to the question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. So no more than $250,000 is authorized to be transferred from the Guam Police Department basically to the governor's office for the purpose of the expenditure of the security. Yes, so it's coming out of the budget, and then the governor will be utilizing this for the payment of her security. Previously, I think it works the opposite way around, that it just comes out of the police department paying for that service. It's like giving, if you were a store, you're giving away free product, and you just have to absorb the cost. Now we're basically having the governor manage this budget. It's $250,000 for a fiscal year for security. The calculations are basically is $250,000. If you know maybe some executive office, the governor, whoever the governor could be, may want 4 officers. Maybe some will want none. Maybe some will want 1 8 to 5, and then afterwards you're off duty, and I'll lock my doors and I'll rely on police patrols to roam my property like all citizens. Or if I take a walk, I don't require anybody to walk with me who's armed and a vehicle to follow me. It's all going to be up basically to the person holding the executive office on how much security is required. What this is doing is saying, let's set a limit, especially now with our budget the way it is, and the situation we're facing. We all, I would think, need to set some sort of budget. But if $250,000 for the security of these two positions, I think is fair enough. And it just depends on how much you want to utilize it or overutilize it and spend it all on first quarter or make it last for the whole year. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Torres, you still have the floor.
Yeah, I appreciate the answer, and I appreciate the concern of the proffer of this amendment, because we have had historically gross abuses of executive security on personal travel, family travel, vacation travel, travel to Europe, travel to Asia, all of that. And I understand the overtime was insane and quite obscene. So the idea that they cap it is something that is palatable. What I don't agree with, though, is that executive security is really the discretion of the Guam Police Department, not for the governor to decide in her non-professional security capacity to determine what her security protocol should be. And so I think in that regard, it really is up to the police department to effectively manage what a sound and reasonable security detail ought to be, and work within that budget and cap it in their discipline, in their thing. Because what I just want to point out, if I can use another analogy, Mr. Chair, is if this legislature were to be under threat for whatever reason, whether they have a very heated public hearing, whether they have a protest where violence is, likely, and we fear for our safety, we do have the ability to call the police department, and that is not on our dime necessarily. So it's that same sort of concept. If I, as a citizen, need help, can I call the police to come, and can it be their responsibility to protect me as a private person, as a person involved in an accident, as a person who witnesses a crime? Can we call in the police department? So I think we have to defer to the security needs to be within the purview and discretion of the police. And so I don't necessarily think that the governor should be the one to design what her security is, because that's where I think the abuse can happen. But you are absolutely right, and I totally agree with you that security, executive security, has been grossly, obscenely abused in the past, and I think that's what we're reeling from. But let's use now, with this climate of austerity, let's leave that discretion of security detail to the chief of police to determine not only the needs, but also who goes in and out, who gets paid what. And so I just leave it at that. This is a very sticky subject, but really security is security, and we have to let the experts be in charge of that and determine what they can afford to pay their personnel, and not the governor, because I wouldn't know what security detail ought to be. But thank you very much. And so I would respectfully object.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Tello, you have...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just have a quick question for OFB. This particular amendment that's being proffered in miscellaneous appropriations, should this be better fit in the administrative provisions instead of this section of the bill?
Senator, because the amendment deals with an appropriation, I think it's best suited to put it under the miscellaneous appropriation rather than administrative provision.
Okay, thank you. Just clarifying that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Speaker, you want to speak to the amendment?
Yes, if, could I just know the details of this? Like, what was the budget for FY21 for this amount? What did the police say? And for FY20? Do we need to cap it? does it exceed this amount already or not?
Senator, what we were trying to look for in the staffing pattern for GPD, whether or not there's actually a division or a section that's something entitled to executive security or any type of program that basically defines and assign officers to for this particular function. And there's nothing in their staffing pattern that identifies who is part of executive security. So I'm just going to surmise that they're just identifying individuals within the Guam Police Department who are officers and those individuals are being assigned to security for the executive branch or for the governor and lieutenant governor. There is no dollar amount. It would help if I knew who those individuals are. We can pull out their salaries out of the staffing pattern and at least come up with a ballpark figure of what it's costing to provide security. But right now, I don't have that information.
Could I ask the author of the amendment, Mr. Chair, if he would yield to any information that would be helpful for us in considering this amendment?
Yes, Senator Martin, do you yield to the question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you for the question. Past experience, and as OFB was saying as well, the executive branch almost can pick and choose, probably by recommendation of GPD, but basically they pick and choose who they wish to be assigned to them. And understandable, but the rank could be from middle rank to high rank. And then it's difficult for GPD as well to figure the total cost. As mentioned on a prior speaker, the off-island trips. And interesting enough, though, the off-island trips security can also be provided by the place of being visited as well, if necessary, and you can call them for that, and that could be provided rather than providing a couple of officers to travel all the way to the East Coast, for example, and one on, one off as well. And I would suspect they would have to stay at the same residence at the time to provide the proper protection. So it's really open on the total amount that can be expended for security of the executives. In addition, when off-island visitors come too, they also are providing this security here as well for the visitors that we have to coming to. So that's why I feel it will be helpful if we, especially with our situation now, to provide some sort of budget for GPD to work with, and then from there, the executive branch would have to work within that budget or use it from their own budget as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Madam Speaker?
Yes,
did
thank
that
you. Thank
answer?
you. And let me just ask one more question then. What is the status of GPD and overtime? Are they managing overtime within their budget, within their FY21 allotment? Are they able to pay for their overtime as they are managing it? Or are we ending up with overtime liability like in way past years that exceed their budgetary authority?
Currently, Senator, I have not been told, or I'm not aware of any prior year huge amount outstanding overtime that is due. I'm pretty sure there is overtime, at least for FY21, that's probably due. I know it's not paid, every 2 weeks. I'm sure there's a lag time for it, but I have not been abreast or told whether or not there is outstanding overtime due in the Guam Police Department.
Thank you. Well, the amendment is very tempting because to put caps on this type of thing, helps to prevent abuse, as one of the previous speakers described. And, you know, of course, just to make things fairer for personnel. But, yeah, I thought one of the previous speakers did make a good point that this has to be managed by Guam Police Department right now, and you know, maybe we should have questioned them more during their budget hearing as to how they are managing this, and without additional information. I don't want to guess, right, as to how they are managing it. And if they are able to manage it, and they are able to manage expectations of the rest of the department as to, you know, fairness and you know, overtime and all of that, and they're not exceeding their budget, then I don't know. I guess that's what I'm considering. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to?
Mr. Chair, point of information, please.
Point of information? Yes, Mr. Moran.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. Chair.
Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Past reports I've seen, just to add on as well, prior overtime for executive security exceeded the overtime for the highway patrol unit. So we spent more on executive security than the payment of overtime for our officers that are patrolling the streets.
Do you have a year on that you're stating that?
That's in the 35th.
That's in the 35th, okay,
Right.
that's, okay.
And then also, recently, for the police reserve officers, we continue to get inquiries about when they will receive their stipends. It's consistently, they consistently ask for help and support of expediting their reserve stipends. So the reserves are feeling it as well, and those are good folks that we can help that would augment our regular police force. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Moran. Does anyone else like to speak on the amendment of Senator Moylan? I see no hands. There is an objection. All in favor, or you would like to close on your amendment, or not needed?
No.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment proffered by Senator Moylan? Please raise your hand. All in favor? We have 1, 2, 3. Motion fails. My colleagues, it's 10 till 7. We're going to end at 7. We have 3 other amendments or 4 other amendments on this chapter. Tomorrow we will finish this chapter, and then we'll move directly into the bookmarks. So please be ready, and don't make any other statement. We will recess to tomorrow at 8:30. I will gavel at 8:30.